Denny Hamlin expresses concern with Hendrick and NASCAR's Le Mans collaboration, and Formula One drops another major event in the United States. How does this affect NASCAR? And more importantly, what can NASCAR learn? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Denny Hamlin had a lot to say this past weekend. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll also talk about Formula One adding a Las Vegas date to their 2023 schedule. We'll talk about some numbers that really highlight F1's sudden growth in the US, especially among younger fans. But first, my friends at NASCAR Pole Position magazine have a very special offer for fans of Out of the Groove. The one and only official NASCAR magazine. This latest issue takes you inside the sport and outside the track on everything from drivers to sponsors to drivers' pets and much more. This issue also features history on some of NASCAR's greatest tracks, a look into NASCAR esports, and even posters. Oh yes, plenty of visual goodies. Your favorite riders from the Out of the Groove Weekly Viewers Guide are also featured, such as Ben White, Jared Turner, Joseph Wolkin, but way bigger. Ben sits down with Ernie Irvan, Jared talks to Austin Dillon, Joe has some questions for AJ Allmendinger, and I'm in there as well, documenting my LA Clash at the Coliseum experience. If you love NASCAR, if you collect NASCAR, you have to subscribe to NASCAR Pole Position. Click the link down below and use code OOTG, Out of the Groove, for $5 off your annual subscription. New issues ship every 2 months. Awesome content, awesome collector's item. I cannot recommend NASCAR Pole Position enough, so be sure to use that special code and get that special offer today. Yesterday, Daniel McFadden wrote a great piece for speedsport.com. At COTA this past weekend, Denny Hamlin was not too happy with how NASCAR went about announcing their Le Mans Garage 56 entry. You'll remember this tweet from a couple weeks ago where Hamlin sort of tongue-in-cheek said Toyota in 2311 were never invited to be a part of this program. Hamlin was concerned for a number of reasons. First, he was disappointed by the lack of transparency, saying this past weekend, finding out through a press conference is not okay. Where's the transparency of it? We talked about transparency earlier this week around penalties, but yeah, that is concerning. Denny Hamlin, yeah, he's a driver, a Toyota driver. He's also a Toyota team owner. He is a co-owner of 2311 Racing. If team owners were not informed of NASCAR's decision to work with Hendrick Motorsports on a 24 Hours of Le Mans entry, that's concerning. Hamlin, an owner, should not be finding out about that the same time all of us fans were finding out about it. But it sounded like Hamlin took even greater exception to the idea that Hendrick Motorsports, one of the top teams in the NASCAR Cup Series, is going to get a ton of extra track time on road courses and will be directly collaborating behind closed doors with the sanctioning body. Hamlin said this past weekend, there's certainly some performance advantages that every company is going to be concerned with. Short of us being allowed to have the same track time, I do not see any way possible that they will not have an advantage, and Hendrick is a team that already has won more races than anyone this season with the next gen. Now, I know y'all like to bag on Hamlin for being outspoken, for maybe complaining a little too much, but he is 100% right. I understand from NASCAR's perspective why they went to Hendrick Motorsports of all teams. I mean, Hendrick is right now the most successful team in NASCAR. They're probably the most recognizable team in NASCAR. Hendrick already works in the sports car world. So I totally understand why NASCAR would want Hendrick Motorsports to represent the sport on the world stage. However, Hamlin's concerns, again, are 100% justified. It's a little weird that the sanctioning body, that NASCAR themselves, are working directly with a single team, Hendrick Motorsports, on this project. And it sounds like if the announcement was kept so quiet, much of their collaboration is in fact happening behind closed doors. And yes, with NASCAR's strict testing policy, any additional track time that Hendrick Motorsports will get because of this project can and likely will be a huge advantage, especially on road courses. Now, NASCAR did say this will be a modified next-gen car. It's not going to be exactly what we see on track in the Cup Series here on Sundays, but so far at least they haven't been very specific. Hamlin also said this weekend, and again, this was in that speedsport.com article. From my standpoint, it seemed like the decision was made and they'll kind of figure out the details later. And I agree with Hamlin here as well. In that press conference, President Steve Phelps was asked by Bob Pockrass about this, about NASCAR's strict testing policy. Will Hendrick Motorsports be given any sort of advantage, or are they going to change the car enough to eliminate any potential advantage? And Steve Phelps didn't really have a specific answer. He said, yes, we're going to modify the car and it's going to be different, but he didn't say how different, didn't say what they're going to do to the car. Yes, they have over a year to make these plans and make these changes, but as of now, no specifics seem to be sorted out. And if any of this is happening behind closed doors, again, Hamlin criticizing the transparency, how can the other teams teams and other manufacturers, Ford, Toyota, how can they trust that NASCAR isn't going to ultimately allow Hendrick Motorsports to get an unfair advantage? I'm sure NASCAR is going to try to keep things equal, but there's only so much they can do, and if there's no transparency, other teams are going to call that into question, and that's not good. Hamlin did say he understands why NASCAR wants to go race at Le Mans. He's not against that idea, he's just against perhaps NASCAR working so closely with one specific team. Hamlin suggested this past weekend that the fair way to do it would be to bring in 3 people from Chevy, 3 people from Ford, 3 people from Toyota teams, and have them collaborate on like a universal NASCAR next-gen entry. That doesn't seem to be the route NASCAR is going, and I think that's why Denny Hamlin is a little miffed that he at least didn't even know about it until we all as fans knew about it. So I know Hamlin can be real outspoken, sometimes he's over the top, sometimes he's too dramatic, but I think he's 100% on point with these concerns. I think he's exactly right, and I hope NASCAR takes the right steps, the right measures to put these other teams and manufacturers' minds at ease to ensure that Hendrick's not getting a major advantage, but I don't even know if that's possible at this point. I love the idea of NASCAR going to France and competing in the 24 hours of Le Mans. I think Hamlin does as well, but Hamlin's right. There are questions about how this project is actually being put together. Anyway, I just wanted to spotlight that for a few moments. Now let's talk about Formula One. Last night, F1 confirmed that they will be bringing a 3rd race to the United States. Next year, in November, there will be a Formula One race on the Las Vegas Strip. That's right, they're building a street race in Sin City. This means in 2023, they'll race on the East Coast, Miami, they'll race Central, Austin, Texas, and now they'll race out west in Las Vegas. This is a big deal for F1, of course, trying to expand their reach into the United States. Liberty Media, who now owns F1, is a United States-based company. This race next year, they didn't announce a specific date yet, but it's expected to be late in November. It's going to be a Saturday night race on the streets of Las Vegas. The visuals, the spectacle will absolutely be incredible. But this is a NASCAR stock car racing show primarily. So what does this mean for NASCAR? Here in the US, we can't ignore F1 any longer. Nearly every week, it seems, they are setting some sort of viewership record. Like this past weekend's race in Saudi Arabia on ESPN got 1.44 million viewers, making it the most viewed F1 race on cable here since 1995. Now, NASCAR Cup Series racing on Fox Sunday afternoon got over 3.7 million viewers, still significantly larger than F1, but let's focus in on that key demographic, the demographic that corporate sponsors care the most about. Viewers aged 18 to 49. It's a pretty big gap. F1 has almost caught NASCAR in that demographic. This past weekend, NASCAR had 758,000 viewers that fit into that range. Formula One had 649,000. So NASCAR is still ahead there, but if we look at these, as a percentage, a higher percentage of F1's US audience is younger compared to NASCAR's US audience. My whole life, NASCAR has consistently had one of the oldest fan bases in major sports, and it doesn't seem that trend has changed even in recent years. So why are younger people flocking to F1 quicker than they're flocking to NASCAR right now? First, obviously Netflix. Drive to Survive, now 4 seasons in, has been a huge hit in the United States. It's been a hit worldwide, but especially here in America. Younger people watch Netflix, they watch Drive to Survive. It's a very dramatic show, and that's what's fueled many of their interest in F1. NASCAR doesn't have that. In fact, last year when Netflix and NASCAR collaborated, we got a goofy Kevin James sitcom, which as sitcoms go was fine, but let's be honest, young people, for the most part, do not watch campy multicam sitcoms. Second, I think this is the biggest point, the broadcast. Formula One races are shorter, they're broadcast with no commercials here in the States. Short, sweet, tight, pretty much everything NASCAR broadcasts are not. NASCAR broadcasts are bloated, frequently 3, 4, 4.5 hours long. Fox's coverage is far more laid back and commercialized, and it wasn't always that way, but it's become more so that way in recent years. I know a lot of y'all hate it when I advocate for slightly shorter races, but I think if you want to reach younger fans, you need to get these races consistently under 3 hours, and in my opinion, many races should be close to 2 hours in length. Young people these days are used to YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Facebook, Netflix, HBO Max, Disney Plus, a lot of commercial-free, on-demand options. When you watch an F1 broadcast and a NASCAR broadcast back to back, it's hard not to see NASCAR as kind of a dinosaur. And this is a third point that a few people have mentioned to me recently, and I haven't talked about in a while, but I think it's true. Video games. young people play video games. I got into NASCAR playing NASCAR Thunder on my PS2 back in the mid-2000s. F1's video game series today is very high budget, high quality, well reviewed, well received, whereas the past few years of NASCAR video games have been smaller budget, cheaper, either light on content or recently extremely buggy. The quality between F1's recent video games and NASCAR's are incomparable. All of these things I just mentioned though, from Netflix to the broadcast to video games, I think falls under a larger umbrella that is presentation. When it comes to the on-track product, I think NASCAR stock car racing is the best racing in the world. It's thrilling, it's exciting, very diverse schedule, a wide variety of tracks. Sure, that's very subjective, but in my opinion, among major motorsports, NASCAR is the most interesting, the most engaging. But F1 does a far better job presenting, marketing, branding their sport than NASCAR does, and I think that's why young people have flocked to it and have fallen in love with it. Now, I'll say this, I don't think F1 becoming more popular in the United States is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for NASCAR. If anything, this is educational. I think F1's rise in the US, especially among younger viewers, can be a learning moment for NASCAR. NASCAR, and especially its broadcast partners, should be willing to look at what F1 does better than them and learn from it, and maybe adopt some of their ideas. I think F1's rise actually gives NASCAR a model, an example to look at so they can better position themselves for the rest of the 2020s and beyond. What will that exactly look like? I don't know. I'm kind of jumping off the Drive to Survive bandwagon. I know F1 fans have not been as fond of the most recent season, and I do worry if NASCAR were to do the exact same thing, it would just be viewed as a lesser copycat series. I almost worry that that ship has sailed. NASCAR is going to have to try something different, but maybe I'm wrong there. Either way, I don't see this as necessarily a bad thing. This is just an educational opportunity for NASCAR and their broadcast partners. So those are my thoughts on F1's new race in Las Vegas. It looks cool, it looks flashy. I'm sure it'll be thrilling for people who spend $1 million to go see it in person. That's all I've got to say. Thank you all so much for watching this video. That's gonna do it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR every single day here on Out of the Groove. I really appreciate your support, and I really appreciate all of you who support on Patreon as well. You guys go above and beyond each and every month. I greatly appreciate it. I will be back again soon. The weekend is right around the corner. Richmond, Saturday and Sunday, gonna be a lot of fun. It's a day race this year for the Cup Series. It takes a little getting used to, but I'll be watching, I'll be reacting to it afterwards. I look forward to seeing you all then. Have a fantastic rest of your week.